Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo. We are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, we are joined here in the new year by none other than the $1 million man himself, Ted DiBiase. Ted, what's going on?
Marcus, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And remember, it's all about the money, honey. I hope you have a very prosperous new year. All of you out there.
Absolutely.
In, wrestling land. So, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Had a great Christmas, surrounded by my grandchildren. Yes, that's right. The $1 million man is a grandpa. But it's great. I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's got to be fun having those grandkids running around on Christmas morning.
Well, yeah, it is most of the time. But there's like, the two youngest one of the two youngest, they're both about 4, and Ava is Teddy's little girl. It's the first girl in the family. I was one of 3 boys. I then had 3 sons, and then Teddy had a son. Brett had a son, and then Brett had another son, and finally Teddy's wife had a little girl. I mean, they were pretty close together, so they're about 4. Ava is our first girl. So, man, I don't know.
That poor girl is outnumbered.
Yeah, but it was good. It was all good.
Man, that's awesome. What a blessing to have so much family around you on Christmas. I'm sure it can get crazy. I've got a 3-year-old running around here, and she can create chaos. So I can't imagine if you've got however many grandchildren running around.
Yeah. I'm not telling you anything. You know.
You got another one coming in February.
Thing when it's your child, but it's another thing when it's your grandchild. It's kind of like, and for the most part, it's true. Except right now, 2 of my grandchildren are actually living here with Melanie and I. Teddy's still looking for a new house and all this other stuff. So I actually have 2 of my grandchildren that live here, and that's pretty cool. But, it's like everything else. It's like sometimes you want to pull your hair out.
Man, just trying to put my daughter to bed is like an Olympic event every night. It is brutal. So, yeah, hopefully you don't have to deal with any of those duties. You can just be fun grandpa.
Nah, I just give him a $10 bill.
That's the way. All right, there's a life hack.
Hey, go to bed. I'll give you a little money. Starting them off right?
I'm going to do that with my daughter now. She's giving me a rough time.
Actually, I just give them a quarter.
Even better. Good.
$1 million man. Hey, you know what? They got to start somewhere, right?
That's it. Got to learn the value of that dollar. And folks, we are bringing you some value here this week for the first episode of 2024. We are taking another look back to Ted's time in WCW. And this week, it's January 1997. And you guys know what that means. It's the infamously bad sold-out pay-per-view in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Man, I can't wait to talk to you about this one, Ted. We've got some great clips. Before we do get into them, though, I have to ask our listeners to do us a big favor before the time is up. As a reminder, our podcast has been named a finalist for the 2024 Best Wrestling Podcast by the Sports Podcast Awards, and we need your help to get us across the finish line. So if you're listening to this and you've enjoyed our show, please go to my social media or Ted's and click the link to cast your vote for us. It only takes a couple minutes, and it would be such a huge honor to win the whole thing. You can find my link on my X account at Marcus P. D'Angelo or on Ted's social media at MDM Ted DiBiase on all platforms. And by the way, speaking of supporting our show, please do us a favor and get subscribed at youtube.com/@everybody'sgotapod. We just completed 2 giveaways with the autograph figures, and there will be more in the near future. So to be eligible, all you've got to do is get subscribed. That's it. Also, without the giveaways, you're going to love what we're doing on our YouTube page. We have stories that you will not hear on the podcast over there. We drop them every week as a YouTube exclusive clip on Mondays. We also have short bite-sized videos from the podcast, which is the perfect way for you to introduce your friends to our show. Again, it's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Go subscribe right now. So, Ted, before we start the show, I didn't want this episode to pass by without first asking about some sad news. The legendary Killer Khan passed away in Tokyo recently, and he's a man that certainly left his mark on wrestling, both in America and abroad. I was wondering if you have any memories of working with him or being around him in general.
Well, I know I worked with him. I worked with him several times here, and I think probably more in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Like and probably a lot during the time that me and Stan Hansen were teamed up. I wish that I think I've spoken about that before. Had a really good deal. Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen were two of they were the two most recognizable famous foreign wrestlers in all of Japan. And Brody jumped ship and he left All Japan Pro Wrestling and went to New Japan. And that doesn't happen very often. Loyalty is a big thing in Japan. And so Stan needed a new partner and came to me. And he says, do you want the spot? And I said, are you kidding? Do I want the spot? It's like his pig's butt pork, Absolutely. I'll take it. It was great. And, but back to Killer Khan, I probably worked with him more in Japan than I did in the United States. And, great guy, though. I mean, that's one thing. The thing I remember the most about him, that he was a very likable guy, very jovial. So,
man, hard to get a bigger compliment than that. His wrestling legacy speaks for itself. But really, I think that the legacy that he's going to leave behind is the kind of man that he was, and it sounds like he was a great one.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Well, a shame to have another loss in the wrestling world. So rest in peace to Killer Khan. All right, we can get into these notes about 1997, Ted. When we last left off, the Giant officially had turned his back on the NWO after failing to help Hogan win Starrcade 1996, and now he's on the road to a title shot against Hollywood. Now that we're into 1997, it's going to be the most pivotal year in the career of Diamond Dallas Page, which is another huge thing that we're going to be talking about this week. Page is about to embark on a career-defining rivalry with Randy Savage, but before he does, he's going to tease joining the NWO and actually shake Scott Hall's hand, put on the shirt, but then hit Hall with the diamond cutter and escape through the crowd, and the audience is going to have a massive reaction to Page. So, I mean, he is arriving here right in January at the beginning of 97. I mean, it's awesome stuff. He's just taken off like a rocket. What did you think it was about Dallas that made him connect so well with the WC audience?
Well, I mean, it's like the one thing, when I first met him, he was a bartender at this bar, and great guy. And Melanie and I, we went, it's been a year or so now, but we went to his home in the Atlanta area, and we stayed with him for a week, and we started DDPY yoga.
What do you think of it?
It's great. It's great. And I need, and now a New Year's resolution is to get back on it.
All right.
Because I got a little lazy. I mean, 17 days, I'm 70 years old. What do you want? The other thing about Dallas is, I mean, obviously he loved wrestling. I mean, and because he was so good to us when we were there, when he was bartending and all that. But, and I, when I first heard that he had become a wrestler, I was like, really? I couldn't believe it. But then to watch how he progressed, I mean, you can't, like, again, I've said this so many times, you cannot teach anybody charisma. That's, it's kind of like, when I was a baby face, I had a more serious attitude, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Nice guy, da, 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 but as a heel, I could just go, and be the wild man. And that's charisma.
They always say it's like you turned up to 11, right? And that's what you became whenever you became the $1,000,000 man and this
Yeah.
over the top outrageous heel.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Dallas has mentioned before that when he was coming into the business, he just wanted to be Dusty Rhodes. And so like you could tell that he kind of borrowed a lot of Dusty's rap. And it's just interesting because you kind of see like it's like there's the coaching tree in wrestling. There's also like the sort of like promo tree of like guys who were inspired
Oh,
by guys like
yeah. Yeah.
Billy Graham was inspired by Muhammad Ali, and then he inspired Dusty Rhodes, who then inspired guys
Dust
like
the
Hogan.
road, they funky like a monkey. He flip, flap, and fly. We all, brother.
So all these guys are borrowing from each other, but then making it their own, and it's like
Yeah.
DDP just had it right.
Yeah. And again, I mean, and again, and I was like, I think guys, it's like, and Dusty now has had two sons who have done remarkably well. And why? Because it wasn't just because their dad was one of the biggest stars in wrestling. It's because, it's their legacy. And it's like, you got to want something really bad. So it's kind of like my dad. Of course, my dad was never around to see me wrestle professionally, but my drive and everything was that. And I never knew my dad as anything but a heel.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I turned heel, I turned it on. I did a lot of his stuff. So,
Man, but then again, much like DDP did with Dusty, you made it your own. You
yeah,
weren't just a
yeah,
carbon copy. It's like you
exactly.
kind
Yeah,
of your own, and that's what it's about.
that's it.
Um, and Dallas here, I mean, eventually he's going to go on to become WCW World Champion multiple times, and of course he's now forever enshrined in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, it's when you first met this guy at this bar, or even when he first became a wrestler, did you ever picture him going on to have this kind of crazy success?
No, I didn't.
How could you, right?
But I mean, yeah, the more that I got to know him, the more, I mean, as I realized, like, kind of like when you walk into a bar, you don't think the bartender is Einstein. Okay, I know what you are there, buddy. You're a bartender. That's your gift. Okay, great, good for you.
And funny, and I mean, again, like how could you meet this bartender and think like, hey, this guy's gonna go on to become a world champion and all of like never in a million years.
I never thought so. No.
I mentioned that he and Savage are about to start a program that would really define Dallas's career. And as a guy who worked with Savage yourself so much, what do you think it was about Randy that made him kind of the guy to help launch Dallas here?
Well, it's kind of like when you've got it and you get in the ring with somebody else who also has it. You can't describe it, but then that they naturally help you along. It's kind of like when I first started. I mean, obviously I was raised in business, but I started off refereeing matches, and but when I first started in the ring, it's like there were two or three different people who I had started having matches with that helped my progress, and the same thing is true of Dallas. And it's anybody. I would say anybody. Yeah, you can't. If you can't learn from somebody that's a star and you're wrestling them, then pack your bag and go home. So, but you learn a lot about timing, and it's kind of like I can't remember anybody off a hand, but they're just different guys that say, "Okay, kid, Not yet, not yet. Like don't get anxious. Like if I'm selling something or whatever, to get up. And he says, wait for it, it's coming. Yeah, they're going to start shouting for you here in just a second. And sure enough, as we kept going, they would, start slowly, and then you get that deal, and you get from your back to your knees, and then you get one leg up, and you get the other leg up, and then you start fighting out of it, and then you go. Anyway,
And that kind of stuff is so fascinating to me, where it's like, this trade essentially that's just passed down from person to person, and maybe you take a little something from one guy in one territory, something from another guy in another territory, and you eventually shape yourself as a performer.
yeah,
Man, really cool. Behind the scenes here in WCW at the time, the tension is starting to boil over a little bit between Hall and Nash and the Nasty Boys. Jerry Sags is just coming off of a concussion, and during a house show, Hall is going to throw a chair at him while he's outside the ring and catch Sags in the head with it. Sags is not a man to piss with, from what I've heard, and he takes exception to this. And while Hall is feeding him a comeback, Jerry's going to punch Scott for real, and he's going to knock out a tooth and give him a black eye and reportedly break his eardrum. Ted, this story has become something of like a backstage legend, and it's ultimately going to spell the end of Sags in WCW. Any chance you remember any of this drama?
the only thing I was there for was TV.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go to the house shows. I obviously heard about this, and there's two sides to every story, and it's kind of like when it's kind of like if we call it a potato, that's wrestling lingo for instead of a working punch, you catch a real one.
Mm-hmm.
We call that a spud, a potato. He potatoed you. You got potatoed, and of course, historically, if you give somebody a potato, then you should expect a receipt. No, not always, but but if you got more than one and it was two, that's when you go ahead and give it back and say, "Hey, loosen up." So
Well, it sounds like Hall got a hell of a receipt here with losing a tooth and a black eye and a broken eardrum. Like, man, that is a nasty punch from Jerry Sags.
yeah.
I mean, just hearing about it on the surface, obviously you weren't there, so you don't know all the details, and you don't know if there was an issue with these guys beforehand. I mean, just hearing about it is, an overreaction from Jerry Sags after getting hit with a chair like that, or do you feel that that's a justified balance?
Well, again, and I never know, I never knew or thought that Razor, that Scott would, be like that. I mean, that's something I would expect the Warrior to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Warrior legitimately didn't give a crap about anybody that he got in the ring with. The only one he cared about was himself, and it was obvious in the way he worked. And I'm sure he potatoed a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny because Scott has developed this reputation over the years of being kind of like vindictive and, wanting to mess with people here and there. And it's like, I don't know, like from a lot of people that have worked with him, including you, it sounds like he was a good worker and generally speaking, a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I never had a problem with Scott, but I don't know.
Sounds like Jerry did.
Yeah. You got to be there. You'd have to be there to see it.
Right. All right. So I think it's also worth mentioning here that Dean Malenko is going to become the WCW Cruiserweight Champion this month at Clash of the Champions. He's another second generation performer, with his dad, Boris Malenko, being a legendary wrestler and trainer. Ted, Dean seems like a guy that you would love, like cut from the same cloth as you and very, very believable style in the ring.
Yeah, I love Dean. Even now, and I know he's had his health issues, and I pray for him, and hope that he's, as good as he can be. But, just, I hate to see something happen like what's happened to him, happen to a guy who had that much talent and capability. And he did go on to be a producer. And I had a conversation with him one time. I said, "Brother," I said, "God bless you for doing what you're doing." I said, "I couldn't do it."
Actually, this year as well, in 1997, Dean Malenko, incredibly, is going to be named the PWI 500 #1 wrestler in the world. Ted, when you would get rankings in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, did it ever mean anything to you? Like, was that something you took a lot of pride in?
No. Like, sometimes they were pretty good, and sometimes it was like, if you're not in the business, you don't really know the business.
Hmm.
So anyway,
So even when you got a high ranking, you were just like, yeah, it doesn't really mean anything.
yeah, I mean, it's, it's kind of like if it's sports writer, that's, it's not, there's nobody in the business voting for that. This is not based on votes by wrestlers. Like, who would the wrestlers vote as the #1 guy?
That's a good question. Like, probably whoever drew the most money would be like the consensus among the wrestlers, right? Like, hey, this guy's the most successful wrestler because he brought the most money to the business.
Yeah.
That would
Well,
be my guess.
and again, like everybody's got a different style of wrestling, and it's kind of like, well, it's kind of like everybody said, well, Hulk Hogan wasn't really a great wrestler. Well, he was great because he understood his character. He understood, like he was he was not a normal sized guy. You know what I'm saying? He's a big guy. He's a big, a big guy. It was okay. Even better, Andre the Giant. Well, you're not going to see Andre the Giant out there doing arm drags and fireman's carry. It ain't going to happen. You got to understand where you fit and how your character fits into the whole scheme.
Andre was not like a Dean Malenko here. He wasn't going to be doing any of that stuff. However, he knew his role and he knew how to be his character better than probably anybody.
And again, to Andre's credit, Andre knew how to take somebody. I mean, there's nobody that he got in the ring with that was as big as him. So he always had to, I mean, obviously in the beginning, anybody that ever wrestled with Andre, the first thing that anybody has to put over is his strength. It's like you try to get a hold on him and he would just power out of it. And, you beat up on him and you try to turnbuckle him and he ain't going to go. He ain't going to go. He's going to pull you back and, give you a big chop and then send you sailing across the ring. It's all about knowing how to work within your character.
And man, you want to talk about the other end of the spectrum. Dean Malenko, I had the pleasure of being around him. I think it was last year, and I go 5'10", and I was bigger than him. He's not a big man, but yeah. he was just such a technical marvel out there. I mean, he's kind of
that's it. And Dean knew that. He knew, and of course, again, here's a guy who came from a wrestling background, who understood, his role. If I'm going to be successful, then I'm going to have to impress people with the moves, and like you get the people to go, "Oh wow, did you see him do that? Wow, unbelievable."
He was too. I mean, some of the stuff that he would do with like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero. I mean, the names go on and on. He was fantastic. Okay, let's take a minute to discuss our fantastic sponsor that is changing the lives of men everywhere. Of course, we are talking about Blue Chew. Are you ready to perform with the confidence of the $1 million man in the bedroom? Are you ready to leave your partner feeling like $1 million? Are you ready to get that thing so hard you could go hunting with it? If the answer to all those questions is yes, it's time for you to give Blue Chew a try. Blue Chew can help increase your performance and regain that old confidence where it counts the very most. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so that you can plan ahead or be ready when that opportunity springs up. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part of it, it's all done online. You can forget about those visits to the doctor's office. No more weird, awkward, uncomfortable conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy anymore. It comes right to you. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. But you know the drill, guys. There's not going to be anything discreet about your package. Men everywhere have never been more excited to see their mail carrier arrive, because when your package arrives, your package arrives. Listen, I know what your next question is. Will it actually work? Why don't you try it for free and find out for yourself? Something free from the $1 Million Man? That's right. You can try it right now for free. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping. That's it. Place your order now and give your partner a very pleasant surprise. Women are attracted to confidence, and Blue Chew can help give you confidence where it counts. Don't wait any longer. Time to chew it and do it. Take advantage of our special deal. Again, you can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code EGAP at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code EGAP, and receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring Everybody's Got a Pod.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the pay-per-view itself. It received an absolutely insane 97% thumbs down rating from the Observer subscribers. And once we start getting into the whole thing, Ted, I think we'll understand why. The idea here is that Sold Out is an NWO pay-per-view put together by Bischoff and the Renegade Group as they take over WCW. So one would think it would mean that the NWO is going to be arriving in style, right, in limos and brought to Cedar Rapids on Learjets. That's what kind of makes sense. But as it turns out, that's not quite the approach that things took here. Let's have a look at our first clip this week.
Minus 200, still hot, still sweet. Going on into town. Are we going to change the world as you know it, or what? Hey, look at me!
Check it out. It's almost time. NWO sold out. You asked for it. The people's choice delivered.
Too sweet. Forbidden son, don't be afraid to throw it up. Pow! Pow! Is this the stuff or what? Yeah. I'm digging it the most. Woo!
All right, so there's all the guys entering the building there. Ted, you guys are arriving because you were there. We didn't see you on the back of one of those garbage trucks, but you guys are arriving on garbage trucks in the freezing cold January.
They're on the garbage trucks. I'm in the limo. Mama didn't raise no fool.
I knew immediately as soon as I started, because I haven't seen this in years, and I was like, "There's no way, there's zero chance I'm going to see Ted DiBiase hanging off the back of one of these garbage trucks." Because apparently it was absolutely free. I mean, it's January in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Iowa and Nebraska, they are right there together. You know.
Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on the whole thing? Eric Bischoff has argued a couple times, and I know I've for sure heard him say it on his show that it kind of fit with the vibe. He said, we've seen people arriving on limos countless times in wrestling. It's totally overdone. So he wanted to try something new. Do you agree with that, or you think it should have been limos for the Renegade group?
Well, no, I actually, even at the time, I thought it was that was very unique, and again, the NWO, this is like the new world order. We're going to do things in a different way, and yeah, I think for the characters in this, that was that it fit.
It's heavily criticized, and I've criticized it before, but getting to watch it back all these years later with a little bit more perspective and seeing it in the black and white, and the guys are selling it like it's fun and they're having a good time. Like if they looked miserable out there, like clutching their jackets against themselves, it might be a different story. But I mean, everybody was into it, so it kind of worked.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, again, I guess. Okay, I guess maybe I'm being too nice, but you didn't see me on the back of the garbage truck.
I think if you had been on the
I'm
back of
in the limo, baby.
I think if you had been on the back of one of those trucks, you might be looking at it differently. Like,
Oh,
that was awful.
no,
It's terrible. Well, speaking of Eric, you and he are on commentary here, and the commentary is going to be one of like 100 things about this pay-per-view that's criticized pretty heavily on the show. And by the way, Eric puts none of it on you. Eric said on his podcast that he takes 100% of the responsibility for it, and that he put you in a terrible position on live pay-per-view because he wanted the whole thing to come off as more improvisational and spontaneous. So he didn't prepare you at all. It was just like, okay, let's go out there and do it. So you're like on the spot calling matches where you don't have any context. You don't know like the background on these guys. And as a result, that's kind of what you get, right?
Yeah.
Good of Eric to at least acknowledge it though,
Yeah. I was like, totally unprepared. It's kind of like I get there and they go, "Oh, you're doing commentary tonight." What?
Yeah.
What? Give me some. And there was nothing to give me. I mean, even when I did a lot of, Vince. I mean, I did commentary for Vince. When I was still with the WWE. And I think, and I did. I'm trying to think which I don't know which show it was, but I did it with Gorilla Monsoon when he was still. He was calling it play by play, and I was doing I don't know what you call that now.
The color commentary.
Color commentary.
Now, do you remember when you were doing it with Gorilla in WWE, are you doing it live at shows or are you doing it in a studio over live tape?
Well, now I had done it live, but a lot of that we did, in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're in the studio. The show that I'm not doing a live show, but these are shows that people are going to see. But the commentary is we're actually watching the show as we're doing the commentary.
And it's a whole other thing when you're doing it live in person and anything can happen, as opposed to like you already know what happened and now you're just doing a voiceover for it. Yeah, whole other vibe. I have to imagine that Vince was like a micromanager in many respects. Like here you're coming into this with Eric admitting that he didn't prepare you at all. I have to imagine that Vince has got you prepared beyond what's even necessary, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've also heard about him getting in people's ears when they're on commentary, where Vince will be on the headset, and if you say something like he infamously hates pronouns, like doesn't like when you refer to a guy as like him or her. Like if you're gonna talk about somebody, you got to say, "Well, Big Daddy Cool Diesel just slammed him." You don't say he slammed him. Now, do you have any recollection of Vince kind of micromanaging or producing you heavily when you were on commentary?
Not really. You know, not really. I mean, again, because a lot of the commentary I did was not. It was kind of like it wasn't a live show. It was this is like the weekly show, like SmackDown, or I don't know, that we did. But I know I did it all with Gorilla Monsoon, and and he would critique me, and as I go, but and the commentary that I did at Survivor Series, I was with Vince.
Oh, so he couldn't be in your ear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and based on what I did at that show, that's why he said, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna. That's what So that's when I started doing color commentary with Gorilla. So
Well, and thinking
I
back
must
on
have done
it,
something right.
thinking back on it, you were great at it. It's just like again, not your fault here. What was happening? You just were not prepared at all, and all of a sudden you're thrust onto live pay-per-view. That's a tough spot.
Yeah.
Well, so Eric admitted that, but he also said something else that was interesting on his podcast with regard to you. He said that if he could do it over again, when he brought you into WCW, he wishes he would have brought you in as a different character. And he says that the Trillionaire Ted thing and playing off your character in the WWF was a big mistake. Do you agree with that? That maybe it would have been better to bring you in with a different character, maybe closer to who you were in like Mid-South?
Well, I don't know. I don't know because, what about the other characters? Diesel and Scott, and were they a lot different than what they were?
They were. Yeah, it's Scott went from being like, the what was essentially applied to be a Cuban drug dealer to now all of a sudden, he's just kind of like this cool, almost like a biker gang type guy. Same thing with Kevin Nash. Hogan has gone from being the Hogan we all knew in the WWF to now he's Hollywood. And you're here as essentially the $1 Million Man. They're just calling you Trillionaire Ted. So I don't know. I think an argument could be made both ways.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
I don't know. It's here's like an interesting thought, and obviously it's all these years later, so we're kind of like fantasy booking it. But like you being part, even as a manager, and having a loaded glove on your hand with a little bit more of a biker vibe, and being able to use that, like load your glove and punch people for a finish. I think that could have been fun.
Maybe you're right. Yeah.
We have something here. That should have been NWO Ted.
Dang, I wish I'd have thought of that.
Well, most of the matches on this pay-per-view are very unremarkable, but there are a few big exceptions. Chris Jericho takes on Masahiro Chono to open the show with a really strong match. Hall and Nash have a nice match here with the Outsiders, and the Outsiders are going to drop the belt, so that's a pretty memorable one. But the match that everybody should go out of their way to see is Eddie Guerrero versus Sean Waltman, who's wrestling here as 6th. And they're in a ladder match for the U.S. title that absolutely steals the show. It's an incredible match. Ted, we have not had a lot of time to talk about Eddie Guerrero here on the show, and this feels like as good a time as any. What can you tell us about your experiences with and around Eddie?
I loved Eddie. Eddie also came from a wrestling family. I mean, his father was the promoter of wrestling in El Paso, Texas. And, his brothers, oh my gosh, I mean, it's just a family of wrestlers. I tell you what, they were all good.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them were very good. And Eddie, but Eddie had Eddie was just an all around nice guy too. And he went way too young.
And kind of in the prime of his career, he had really started to achieve his biggest success in WWE, and then just passes away, at a tragically young age. So it's a shame because Eddie had given a lot to wrestling, and it's like he was not near done yet. He still had a lot left to give.
Oh yeah, he was. I mean, I wouldn't even say he was midway.
No,
he had a lot more to give. Great guy.
On paper, he could still probably be working at a high level today with how skilled he was.
Yeah. Yep.
Ted, I've also got to ask you about ladder matches while we're here. Have you ever been in a ladder match?
No. Never was in a ladder match and never wanted to be in a ladder match.
So if somebody had asked you to be in one, would you have gone for it? Or like said, hey, you've got to give me a little more money, or how would that have gone?
I guess, I was never one that I wouldn't say no. I'm more like, okay, I'll, unless it was just absolutely ridiculous. I would probably try it.
What about a scaffold match? Would you ever do one of those? Have you ever done one?
No, never did that either. It's like, if I was involved in a scaffold match, I was a manager.
That seems a lot safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, like, okay, climbing a ladder, it could be terrifying. Being up on that scaffold and looking down and not having anything on either side of you, no thanks. Nope.
Yeah.
The overall concept of a ladder match, though, Ted, like, do you think it's a good match idea, or like, like good for other people, just not something you would hope to do?
Well, it's I mean, what makes, well, anything that's unique is anything that you can add that's different, and different is always good, because it's kind of like, everything in wrestling has been done and redone over and over, like a cage match and a lumberjack match and those type of things. Oh gosh, whatever, like a Texas death match and all of that stuff. So if you can think of something that's unique, that's never been done, and get it over, then you're good to go. But I don't think there's anything that's been undone right now. Of course, as I say that, then they'll think of some new ridiculous thing like, okay, let's have a parachute match. What's that? Oh, you got to jump out of an airplane with a parachute.
Fight on the way down.
Fight on the way down and open your parachute before you die.
I think we just gave him some ideas, Ted. Somebody's going to do this match now. You lose the match if your parachute doesn't open.
Yeah.
Let's get to the part of the show that I know a lot of listeners have been waiting for. Over the course of the show, we've been seeing contestants for the Miss NWO Beauty Contest. Eric said on his podcast that he wanted to do something different. So instead of bringing in some really attractive strippers or actors or whatever, he brought in what he referred to as trucker women. So these ladies are not exactly beautiful in the traditional sense, which again kind of makes it seem like being part of the NWO maybe isn't quite as cool as it originally appeared. So after the ladder match, we get a winner for the beauty contest. Let's have a look at how this train wreck goes.
We have the flowers. Do we have the crown? Do we have the money? There is no money. Because we have a winner. And the winner is... The winner is the new Miss NWO. Make your money, tell a story. The Cedar Rapids chapter. About the money right now, you can hear it. Ted DiBiase, obvious. Richer than the rest, hit the champion. Here comes the set. It's the story of a legend.
yes,
Question.
it's
The
good
story
to
of
be
life.
king.
Paying all the money, telling all the fights. Fist drop, $1 million dream, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a part, everybody's got a price. DiBiase, price is the $1 million man.
It's good to be king.
Understand, everybody's got a
No,
price. Dollar man.
I can't believe that I forgot that.
You probably blocked it out intentionally.
That probably was one of the things that I never wanted to remember. Oh gosh, that was horrible.
Oh, just I mean, awful. And that's your commentary partner on the show. It's you and Eric Bischoff on commentary. So that means that you probably had to sell it and act like it was, a great thing. And oh my gosh,
Gosh.
just hideous stuff. At this point, you've got Eric Bischoff making out with this woman on a show. you've got like things are not going right at the show at all. There's just so many errors along the way and just flubs. Like there's also a Mexican death match at the start of the show that didn't feature anybody from Mexico in it. It was like Big Bubba and Hugh Morris in there. Like it was just
Yeah.
the show is a mess. But at the time, it felt like it was a little bit too hot to fail. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was yeah. Yeah.
If anything can save the show, Ted, it's the Dallas Cowboys. We're at the main event, and Hulk Hogan is going to take on the Giant with the WCW World Title on the line. And Hogan is accompanied to the ring by some very special guests. Nate Newton, George Teague, and Ray Donaldson of the Dallas Cowboys are here with Hulk Hogan. As a reminder, this is just a year prior to these guys winning the Super Bowl. So it's a really big deal to have them here in WCW. Ted, I know that you're a huge Cowboys fan like I am. Do you
Yeah.
remember being around these guys at all?
Well, not at all. Just remember meeting them, and I was thrilled to meet them. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
I mean, especially with you being a former offensive lineman yourself, and now here's like these guys
Yeah.
from the offensive line and George T, who played on the
Yep.
defense. But it's, I
Yep.
mean, just really, really a cool thing. And yeah, I mean, it's this pay-per-view flopped in a lot of ways, but man, anytime you can get the Dallas Cowboys on your pay-per-view while it's an active season, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that is.
Well, if the Miss NWO thing didn't kill consumer confidence, it wasn't for lack of trying here. It sold out because the pay-per-view main event is going to go to a no decision between Hogan and the Giant. I know I wouldn't be really happy if I purchased this pay-per-view and it went to a no decision in the main event, but I guess I can see the logic in trying to kick the can down the road a little ways between the Giant and Hogan. But what's your opinion, Ted? Do you think that there needs to be a definitive finish on pay-per-view in the world title match?
I would say so. I felt the same way. It's kind of like, maybe it fits for something they're going to do later, but when you have a major main event and it's a pay-per-view event and people have, paid their good money to watch the pay-per-view, which is what it is, or they're in person, then, you need to give them their money's worth. And you either, either the champion wins or he gives up the title. That's the way I see it. It's got to be a winner or a loser.
The babyface doesn't have to go over. Like the heel can win, or vice versa. Like it doesn't matter. Just give us like an actual finish.
Well, yeah, because the babyface goes over, everybody's happy, and you go on, and then you get a new heel ready for that baby face.
Mm-hmm.
Or the heel screws the baby face of the pay-per-view, and now they have the opportunity to go have another run and have several more clashes to the next pay-per-view. But ultimately, that baby face has got to win.
A lot of people in the audience were dissatisfied, but we're going to make sure that our audience is satisfied next week. We are going to continue the story of Ted's time in WCW next month, but next week we're taking advantage of Royal Rumble season by discussing Royal Rumble 1989 from 35 years ago. Mr. DiBiase here is going to try to buy his way into a later spot in the Rumble, and he's going to bump into Big John Studd on the way. We'll be talking about all of it. Before we go, I want to remind you all that if you'd like to get this podcast with no commercials and get access to a ton of sports entertainment and other shows, get over to premierstreamingnetwork.com and sign up for Premier Plus. If you're a wrestling fan, they've got something for you. Not only do we have our show there, but RVD's podcast is there, Sabu, and many others. Just go and have a look. You don't have to sign up to look. Just go to premierstreamingnetwork.com, check out some of the content there, and I think you'll know that signing up for Premier Plus is a good decision. Also, if you're enjoying our show and you're listening on your podcast app, help us out. Take one moment to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review there because that helps Ted and I out a bunch. Make sure that you follow Ted at MDM Ted DiBiase on all of his social media to see what he's up to. Follow me at Marcus P. D'Angelo on X, and follow Premier Streaming Network at Watch on Premier on X and at Premier Streaming Network on Instagram and Facebook. Ted, another fun look back to WCW. It wasn't all good this month here in January 97, but it was fun to look back on it.
Oh, as always, it's always fun to look back and, reminisce and And that's it's like it's kind of like hindsight's 2020. It's like, yeah, you look back and you go, man, if I'd have just done this. Well, you can't live your life that way. As long as you learn from whatever mistakes you may have made, more power to you. That's life.
Well, that is going to wrap us up for this week. Always a blast to talk to you, brother.
Hey, as always, it's a pleasure, Marcus, and you do such a good job of looking up things. I mean, it's like you are helping me bring a lot of things back to my memory that I have totally forgotten.
So between that and me showing you clips of Eric Bischoff making out with people, I think
Oh no, you could have showed me a lot of things, but I rather would have not. I didn't want to see that.
So I'm bringing up memories, even memories.
That was not ugly. That was oogly.
Well, I still had fun with you as always, my friend.
All right. Hey, and as always, remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
We'll see you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.